it's just as gross and disgusting for men to be promiscuous as it is for women.
I don't think that the female's being less courageous in that situation.
I still think you're wrong about the courage thing, but
You think I'm wrong?
I'm gonna set that aside for a second.
No, it's my responsibility to take that.
Ding. All right, take those 2 points. Let's go. Next.
Welcome to the Patros Podcast, where we're going to discuss healthy masculinity. My name is Allan, Pereira, and my co-host here, Jeff Ford.
What up?
What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? We got a couple of guests with us today, as we're going to be having a rotating, what would you say, panel
The
of
panelists.
guests. Yeah. So, who do we got with us today? Some recurring visitors.
My name is Shane Scott. Serve on the board of Man Up and Go.
Yeah, Luke Sawyer, used to be staff with Man Up and Go, used to be on the board. Jeff kicked me off, but here I am.
Ooh, I saw Jeff's nose flare.
We set a high bar here.
Oh,
Set a high bar,
shots
man.
I did not hit the bar.
No, the bar
You
hit
hit the
you.
bar.
1 and 2.
That's awesome. Well,
Let's go.
let's go.
Let's get into it.
Yeah,
What
let's
are we
get after
talking
it, man.
about?
Let's get
What are we
after it.
talking
Let's
about
go.
today? So we thought like we'd just start with some, just a little lighthearted stuff. Going through these 36 questions that women have for men. And so Allan and I talked about a couple of them
Okay, here we go.
Again, we were not briefed about this, but
last
we're listening.
week. Now these are, again, like for you churched people, don't get your, I was going to say panties in a wad.
You can't say that.
But
But
you're
I'm
a
gonna
man.
say, but you're a
just
You
man.
did.
shouldn't have panties.
Oh, God. All right, Jeff, continue. What were you
And
saying?
edit.
I'm so glad I edit these because I get to laugh later and then I cut it out.
At any rate, just take, these are the questions that were asked, all right?
Yeah.
So just relax. If you're not feeling it, just wait till the next one. But this is what the people in the culture are
We
talking
didn't
about.
create these questions.
So if people in the culture are talking about these things, I think this is one thing that Christians need to get over. We need to get over ourselves.
Correct.
We have made everything about the traditions of men instead of like true like life, true gospel life. And I'm just like, if we're going to have any impact on the culture, if
Yeah.
we're going to have any kind of like winsomeness, and the Bible says adorn the doctrine of Jesus, like make it attractive.
Yep.
We
Jesus
got to
looked
like
good.
get over the fact that like people are sinners.
Yeah.
Without Jesus, people are going to sin, so they're going to ask these kind of questions, and this is what
Yeah.
they're talking about. And this show is a topic about masculinity. We're trying to make it healthy, so these questions will lend themselves, I
Yes.
think. So anyway, all right, now that
We can
You good, bro.
engage
Run
the
with it.
culture.
Run
We
with
don't
it.
have to affirm it.
I'm stepping off my soapbox.
Well, you got to ask the questions.
Okay. All right. So here's a question. This is the questions that women want to know. Why are you surprised when women are funny?
I ain't jumping into that one. Not yet.
I don't think I am.
I don't
mean,
know that I am either.
Yeah. Some of the comedians are the best.
Name a funny comedian.
Oh,
woman.
who's the?
Wanda
we were
Sykes.
just talking about
See,
this
you
last
don't even
night.
know her name.
No,
Wanda
the,
Sykes.
the
She's
girl
funny.
that does
Got caught.
the girl that does
Talking about Roseanne.
Shanae. No,
That's
shoot.
not a guy. I mean, that's not a girl.
It is a girl. No, shoot. I'm trying to remember her name.
Y'all are already
Dang,
transgendered
bro.
up
You
in
don't
this thing.
even-
I don't know that I
No.
could
Hold
name
on,
you a male
hold on,
comedian
wait,
either,
wait.
but Jim Gaffigan, I got you one.
Bro, Dave Chappelle, bro?
Is
Are we
Martin
just
Lawrence.
gonna-
Dave Chappelle.
play
No,
like
no.
Martin
No.
Lawrence.
Shoot, it's Michelle something. Now Google's
Obama?
gonna.
All right, we'll go with it. No, but Wanda Sykes I think is hysterical. Amy,
No, there's some
I
really
think it's
funny
good.
female comedians.
Amy
Yeah.
Poehler and Tina
There
Fey
are more
are
probably
funny.
they're hysterical.
Theo
But-
Vaughn. Bro, nobody's beating Theo Vaughn and Dave Chappelle and Andrew Schultz and
Well,
Chris Rock.
Dave Chappelle's on a
and
different level. I mean,
That's what I'm saying.
everyone else didn't kind of.
I'm not against female comedians. I'm just saying.
But I
I
wonder-
Mean, were you
I
talking
wa-
about just regular
Let's
people
talk about
or
those.
like
Let's talk about
regular- or
top five. Who's your
comedians?
top five?
Top 5 comedians
You
in
got
general?
you have a female in your top five?
I do not.
Shoot. I don't know that I can name.
But
my
I
top
mean,
5
that's because I probably don't
I'm
watch
just
as many as
I'm
females.
just
All
getting I'm
mine-
just setting
all
you guys
mine
up
are-
to get smoked up by your wives.
No, but I think like do women think that
I'm not
Men
surprised
are
when
funny.
girls are funny. Yes. 100%.
You're right, because that's the
how
only
guys-
way we got
Correct.
That's
the-
how when you look at a guy and you're like, no way he got her. Oh, he's funny.
Well, I was thinking about that the other day. I was thinking about everybody on the podcast. I'm like, how did we get anybody, quite frankly?
Maybe that is part of the reason,
I'm
though.
ridiculously charming. Let's
Bro,
just be honest.
What if that's part of the reason? Like,
What?
I'm not shocked when women are funny, but men have to acquire certain skills if they're not at a certain either economic or physical looking
Be
or
careful.
athletic. You have to acquire certain skills, which is be likable, be personable, be good at communicating, which then lends you to also being funny.
In their eyes. I think this is part of that whole beauty's in the eye of the beholder, because there's guys.
But guys aren't looking for funny girls all the time. Guys are
No,
looking
I'm
for-
talking, but if you're talking back to women looking for men, right? I thought that's what you were making reference to.
Yeah, I'm saying, what if that's a skill that men acquire in trying to gain female attention?
Well, because I
whereas
think
women
guys
don't
are-
necessarily need to acquire that skill to gain male attention because men already give it to them.
Well, because I think guys are looking for affirmation. right?
Exactly.
And they find affirmation in the girl laughs.
Yes.
Now I've been affirmed in it.
Yeah, girls aren't just gonna give any guy like that attention. They might be more picky because they're just more discerning maybe. At a younger age, they mature faster. But guys naturally will be like,
Is it
I
a
have to get
funny
her
thing,
attention.
or is it because they find it cute? Because I don't know if it's necessarily like, oh, he made me die laughing, as much as
maybe.
I don't know. I disagree.
with what?
What you got? What you got?
Might
Well,
be talking about too much.
My mother, no. My
Disagree
mother
with what though?
has said, no, I'll tell you with
Oh.
this example. My mother has said years and years, for years and years, that your father makes me laugh.
So
For
many
years
women
and
say
years.
that.
Okay.
So I
He
think
makes me laugh.
I think that laughter is like really important, and so I think that they do find us
Bro.
funny or
Yes.
funny looking. Hopefully more funny than funny looking, and
Or
that's how
both.
we get them
If you're
to
funny
date us.
looking, you have to be funnier.
You have to be funnier. No, I coached with a guy back in the day, and decent looking guy, normal guy like the rest of us, but it's not like he was on GQ or something.
Okay.
Always had the hottest girls, always.
Oh, you told me about that. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so the players are always like, man, coach, how do you get those beautiful girls? And he's like, guys, I try to tell you, it's not about how you look. It's about your personality. Like, you make a girl laugh. So I think that there is something to that.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah. It's a skill you kind of have to acquire just naturally if you want to get female attention. Maybe.
think-
As a young kid.
I
I'm
think
not
it's
saying girls
unique to
aren't
the-
funny. I'm just saying
I think it's unique. Like,
that view.
there's things that guys do that some women will not find funny.
Yeah, that's immature stuff.
No. But I mean, just that's not their sense of humor. I think there's certain things that guys do that across the board, like a Dave Chappelle,
Yeah.
everybody across gender
Regardless.
finds it
yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
And I think that some of the things, like what your dad did that made your mom laugh, might not make the majority of other women laugh.
Right.
But for some reason, he found out what she needed for her to laugh.
Or maybe he got game.
He got mad game.
I don't know if my dad had game. I was trying to think
Bro,
of,
you looked up into this.
like-
like,
he's
like,
he went there. He went back to.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I was thinking about that. Actually, I was talking with somebody else about that, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know, but maybe he did. That's the thing. Like, we were
He
talking
had enough
about.
game.
Well, we were talking about generational curses,
Okay.
and so we were talking about. Have you ever done a genogram?
No.
So, like, a genogram is where you take your family tree, and then you look at where there was abuse, where there was broken relationships,
How do you
where
do
there was
that?
healthy.
You
That's what
gotta
I'm
sit
saying.
down
You
and
have
talk
to
with
sit
people.
down and
Yeah.
talk with people, and you map it out. So you put it on a piece of paper so that
couldn't
you
do
can
that.
see.
Yeah.
Right? And we were talking about that, and we can't go back far enough. And I was thinking, because we're talking about generational curses and how, like, anyway, it came to my dad, and I was like,
Yeah.
did he have, no, I don't think he. Because, and the reason this came up is I was at a service yesterday, church service. Pastor said that he was talking with a pastor friend of his in Kentucky, and they did a survey in the church. Now, I don't know, man, this is true or not, but this is what he said.
Okay.
They surveyed and said how many are in some kind of affair. And I don't know if it was just emotional or physical or
pastors
whatever.
or
No,
like
the
just the
congregation.
Members, yeah.
So about
Okay.
2,000 church members. You didn't have to put your name on it. He said 64%.
No.
Stop lying.
That's what he said. That's why I turned to someone who's with me. I was like, let's say
that's
it's
a failure of pastoring.
okay. Let's say that's half that.
I mean,
Okay, but
you
let's
don't know
say
where
it's
they were
half
when
that.
they came in.
Let's say it's half
If the
that.
church is 2,000 people, you
Sure.
It's
interact with
30-something%, right?
Yeah.
That still is an
But
insane
people
number.
who admit it.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
the other part.
Well, no, because that's what the guy said. That was a high number. The guy said, well, this pastor was like, well, let me encourage you. At least your congregation is honest.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
gee.
true.
Yeah.
Because if they're admitting it at that
Well, are
at
they
that
or
kind
are
of-
they? They're honest, but also dishonest because they had the affair.
Well, I mean, if it,
They're honest with their pastor, not honest with their spouse.
but that's how that came up, and it was like,
Well,
did
pastor
my
said.
dad engage in that kind of activity? And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, I never knew about it if he did.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking, did Dad have game like that?
Is that game
Wow.
or is that?
That's
Well,
sin.
Well,
We're
that's
gonna call it
about
sin.
masculinity,
Yeah,
right?
we're gonna
That's-
call it
that's-
sin.
That is
We're going to
sin.
dive into some of that today.
But
Yeah.
I was thinking about him
64%.
as like a
64%.
pursuing women, and did he? Anyway.
That's insane.
All right, let me ask you one more of these questions, and we'll get into the topic today. Okay. Why can't I sleep with as many people as I want without being judged?
Define sleep.
This is women asking men.
Define it. What you need definition for, Allan?
We're talking to people in the public, so we have to define some terms because not everybody sees.
So,
I
so
think it's
basically, the
making
question
reference
is,
to have
why
sex.
can't
Okay,
women?
there we go.
The question
I'm
is,
pretty
why
sure
can't
everyone
women,
knows what that
Bro,
means.
sleep is sleep.
Oh, God.
So the
Okay.
question is, why
No,
can't
no.
women be promiscuous like men are promiscuous, or
Correct.
why the soul slut
Yeah, like,
shaming
why does
culture and all
popular
that kind of
culture
stuff?
say-
Pop
Okay,
culture
all right,
says if you're a dude and you sleep with a bunch of women, you got game. If
Body
you're,
count, right?
Yeah.
Well, I know what the
yeah.
manosphere says. I also know what the Bible
Yeah,
says.
you don't want to look at Twitter for this question.
Yeah. Shoot.
Or X. Sorry, my bad.
I think that's changing.
Yeah.
Like I
It is
speak with
changing.
young, because we do a lot of work. Jeff and I and all of us actually do work with young people who are in the foster care system and just DJJ and everything else like that. And women or young ladies are bragging about their body count.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
different. It's different
Yeah.
than when I was young. Even some of the guys didn't brag. They'll talk about, oh, I got the hair or whatever, but it's just different. There's and they say
an
it's
empowerment
sexual
thing is what
freedom.
they're saying,
Yeah, like
yeah.
Right.
I'm empowered to
Yep.
do this as a woman. I can do this now. And who cares what you think about me? And it is because, well, let me. Well, no, I'm gonna tell you because you asked the question, right?
Yeah.
I think there's certain things that were culturally defined because of what. Just even the physical element of intercourse, right? Is that in order for we're speaking freely,
Yeah.
in order for a woman to engage in intercourse, she has to receive the man into her, right? And that was like, how would you continue to allow people to come into you? Now, in the same case, I mean, I'm not trying to encourage guys to go put your stuff in
Facts.
anybody else, but I think there's this concept of you are opening yourself up to other people coming. I think it's still just as disgusting as every guy going around trying to put himself into everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that culturally, we think that there's a difference that a woman is, and especially as you think about slut shaming but
Yeah.
even just the purity culture, which came from Christianity, like,
Yeah.
oh, you have to continue because your guy can't control himself. You have to be more chaste.
I think
Like,
just naturally, like I don't even necessarily because so many cultures function that way, where they I think it's almost innate. Like if you just were to lend yourself to your instinct, like you look at the way that, I think people one thing that people say on social media that I don't agree with, but they say is a good lock something that many keys can open, or is a good key that can open many locks? And that's what they say about men and women.
Yeah.
Is and I don't agree with it, but I think people naturally think that way.
But to the point of what we're getting at with all this, how much is that a failure of dads?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how much do we
Yeah.
see dads perpetuating that
Yeah.
cycle for their kids, putting forward this idea that masculinity is this conquering of women?
Amen.
Right? And the reality, just like Shane said, right? It's just as gross and disgusting for men to be promiscuous as it is for women,
Yeah.
right? And we need to be raising a generation of men that are thinking differently about that, because I think that is a prevalent thought, right? And we got to change the narrative when it comes to that,
For sure.
because this is an equal playing field here.
Yeah.
I want to challenge something you just said. not because I don't disagree with it, I agree with it. But the idea that sleeping with multiple partners is gross and disgusting.
All right, good. Yep.
Because I think most guys who hear that, I think they would say, no, that sounds great.
They aren't looking at the science.
That's fine, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying in general, like that idea, because purity culture, which is what I grew up in, can have the opposite effect.
Sure. Well, and I think one thing we don't talk about as men is that when it comes to sex, men, common culture will tell us this is a physical act, right? Because men don't want to admit the fact that this is much more deeply emotional than we let it on to be.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like even inside of marriage, I think we can all agree, like this is an emotional act.
For sure.
And so the idea that, and I agree with you in the sense that like, yeah, gross and disgusting, probably not the right term to use here, but the idea that we are consistently giving ourselves to more and more people. When we backtrack and we think, all right, like what are we really trying to get at? If we want healthy, biblical, authentic masculinity that protect and provide and all the things that we've talked about, that's a deep protection and a deep intimacy with one person.
Yeah.
Bro, it's so funny because my brother and I are just voxing about this today. Like,
voxing, what does that mean?
Voice texting, basically.
Okay, all right, cool.
Voice texting.
Call the boy. Pick up the phone and talk to him.
You know what? He's a millennial and he voxes.
I'm a millennial. I don't vox.
Well, you know what? Not everybody
Keep going,
does the same
Jeff.
stuff.
Keep going. Let's go.
So we're talking about this today where he says, so he's like flirting with his wife all day, right? And then, it's kind of like, hey, we going to do this tonight?
He did that little shake.
He's getting a little like Latin hips going. It's not me. This is my bro. And then it's like, no, not tonight or whatever. And everybody here has been there, so I'm not saying nothing that is secretive. But the point was, it's like he was crushed, right? And he was like, what I don't think women understand is like, they will say to us, and I've heard this too, like, well, for you guys, it's all about sex. Well, the sex is what brings the intimacy.
Correct. Yep.
So, like, I am more emotionally connected after the sex. And we were talking, is it, for women, is it they need to be emotionally connected beforehand.
Correct.
On average.
On average. I mean, we're generalizing.
Yeah, there's outliers here.
There are outliers.
Not. Bro, why'd you look at me like that?
Continue. Go ahead, Jeff.
Anyway, it's just
Almost
interesting,
done.
right? Like that there is intimacy, and to your point, we sometimes make it all about the physical, but it's not. There is a spiritual union because that's how God designed it.
Yes.
And it's a lie. And that's what I think we're trying to get to, is like this concept of I would even say false. Not even toxic or anything, but false masculinity. And I didn't even say just false engagement with each other, is that it's just a physical act. It never is. It never is.
Well, and I think
even when it's being like perpetrated on someone, it's still not a it's a power trip. It's an emotional need.
I mean, what does the Bible say,
all
right?
these things. It's never just intercourse.
Right. Well, and my wife and I were talking about this the other day, because the reality is, I think for us as men, one of the things we crave is affirmation. Right? Like we want to be desired, we want to be wanted, we want to be affirmed by our wives, and the way we feel that the most is in that act. Right? So it's deeply emotional because it's affirming us in who we are.
Yeah. And I think when people throw it around willy-nilly like that, it's in terms of just being promiscuous or whatever, it loses that endearment that, we have come to this place where we're going to truly be as intimate. It's kind of hard to be more physically vulnerable with somebody else. I mean, you're naked, you're in front of each other. We think about the fact that, I was going to make a biblical reference, but just even the fact when you choose to remove your clothes with somebody else, there's nothing else that you're covering, right? I mean, you are there. Now, there's people who are exhibitionists. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people who choose to come to a place where you and I are going to connect now.
Yes.
And I'm going to be vulnerable in front of you.
Yeah.
And trust that you will still receive me, right? And that is part of that into me you see part that we're trying to say, I allow you to look at me bare, naked. and I'm looking at you bare naked, and I'm receiving and connecting with you. And when you start to pull that away as just one night stands or just having sex as many times as you can with people, maybe it's the same people you're hooking up with, but there's no emotional connection, that's a lie. One person's always going to get to a point where I'm invested in this more than you are.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if we don't address that on both sides and say, stop playing around with your heart. It's not just yes, STDs are real.
You've quenched the spiritual.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
You try to, and you can't. That's the part, because it was not designed for
Because
that.
when you dig deep enough, you'll still see that there's a underlying issue there.
Yeah,
with
and you
someone.
might not feel it in the moment, but
Yeah.
you
Well, you
will
can numb
over
out.
time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
But
you
we
can
numb
But that's
out.
what I'm saying. I think guys numb out, and we say, "Oh, I'd rather not feel." So like people go to any one of
Yeah.
addictions, right? I'd rather
Yep.
not feel than to actually feel. And so I'm
Yeah.
going to suppress this God-sized, hole in my heart, as Blaise Pascal said.
Yeah.
I'm going to suppress
To
that.
feel accepted.
And
through
so the more that I demean the union of a man and a woman, the less I will be in tune with God. I mean,
sure.
that's just what will happen over time.
that. Yeah.
Right, because the Bible talks about that, a searing
Searing of-
conscience,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like that. So that's what we're kind of talking about here.
Well,
So-
even go back to the question, right? Like, it's not right that people don't put women and men on a level playing ground when it comes to that, right? Like that people would say women are disgusting if they sleep with several partners, but then men aren't. I don't think that that's right, nor is it fair, nor is it just.
Nor is it true.
Nor is it true,
Yeah.
right? I think God holds men and women accountable for their sin regardless of gender. But I think the reason that they're asking that question, first of all, they're not asking to a Christian audience, right? So they're asking to popular culture, and why popular culture says it's not fair. I believe that part of it has to do with it is more. So this is something that's not. It's not right, but this is how people work in our society. When men sleep with several partners, what do you say? They got game, right? That's just what kids say. Like teenagers, even guys that are grown-ups, they'll say, man, he has game. When a woman sleeps with several partners, what do they say? What you just said, they slut shame, right?
Yeah. She's
Why? Because for a man to sleep with that many partners, it takes more effort and work in order to manipulate or use, right? Whereas a female, to get her to sleep with several men, typically she's going to be more treasure her body more than a man would, because men don't necessarily treasure their bodies the way they should. Now, is that right? No, not at all. And that's where we go to discipleship needing to be at the forefront.
It goes back to the whole thing of fatherhood, right?
Yeah.
If you don't see an example of how to cherish your mom,
Yeah.
or how a wife is cherished, right? The woman doesn't see that. The young girl doesn't see, okay, so a guy should be looking for these things to be a protector, a provider, a partner, a priest, establish myself like that. And if a guy doesn't see that, he's like, okay, so I have no idea what it is to treat a woman. So I'm going to go to what I see on TV or in other places. And this is the role that men, again, that union, it took a man and a woman to make another person. That implies it probably takes a man and a woman to rear that person.
Yes.
And when one of those are missing, things are askew. And if people can't step up, if they're in that relationship and, hey, look, step up and do your part as the male in that relationship, or others can't come along and step in when someone is absent either by death or divorce or abdicating the role, you have people growing up confused with what does it mean to have a man be a partner with me? What does it mean as a man to partner with somebody else?
Right.
And when we don't have that, we see the madness that is existing now.
And who's at the most risk, right? In that interaction, in that kind of interaction, who is at the most risk? Is it the man or is it the female?
Yeah, because I'll be like, I got pregnant. No, you didn't get pregnant by accident. That's the first thing. And two, you didn't get pregnant by yourself, right? There are people who are connected, but the result or the reality is the woman is now carrying that child, right? And so that guy can go off and do whatever. And until you start to build in that responsibility, there is that. So people are like, oh, well, just go ahead and get your tube size or put on birth control. That defeats or that doesn't circumvent what happens to you emotionally when you go through these things.
Yeah.
And when we lie to kids about that,
Yes.
and not just kids, when we lie to people about the emotional connection, then they wake up like, why in the world do I feel like this?
Right.
Well, there's a reason that God says that is the one sin where you don't only sin against your body, but you sin against the Holy Spirit.
Well, not only that, I mean, when you look at that term
You know
that's
what I mean?
used there, like there's two words in Greek for body, right? There's
Yeah.
sarx and soma, right? Sarx is like your physical flesh. What Paul's saying there is the word soma, like it's this idea that it's like your flesh, your soul, your spirit,
whole
like
person.
you're sinning against your soul
Yeah.
in that scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's heavy, man.
I hate, like, I used to do a lot of work with abstinence, and people can take that for what it is. But one of the things that I would try to do is to say, look, you were designed for connection with one person for one lifetime.
Yep.
That is, I mean, the things that are released at a point of orgasm, that are only released at a point of orgasm, are designed to bond you with that person. And when you try and just continue to stick, and we do this thing with tape, we do it with a bunch of other stuff as a symbol. It's not the same thing, but to show you that if you keep doing that, the power of that bond is weakened.
Yeah.
And I mean, the only thing that's going to restore that, in my opinion, is the Holy Spirit coming in.
Yes.
And one of the things I also say, that just for our audience, I'm not certain who's listening, is your virginity, in my opinion, can never be taken from you. The virginity is something you give. Can you no longer be physically a virgin because you've been molested or whatever? Yes. That is a true state of your scientific biological state. But I believe your virginity is something that you have.
The purity you've
and
held on to.
You choose to give that to somebody else.
That's good.
And so I want to encourage you, if you've been through something that's impacted that physically, if it was not of your choice, I think you still have the ability to give of what you have to someone else and treasure that because it's still yours. It's still yours. And we have to be honest with people. This is not just a physical thing.
Yeah. Amen.
There's an emotional, spiritual component to this that I think people know, but just like you were saying, they want to just try and jade themselves to it. And because I know if I deal with this on the level it's at, it's going to be too heavy for me to carry.
Yes.
A long answer to the question.
Sorry.
It wasn't his question either.
Man, that was deep. I hope y'all got some good stuff out of that. The topic for the day is defining masculinity. So that's what we're going to talk about for the next half hour or so. And so I'm gonna kind of guide us through this, and we'll get your takes. But the word masculinity comes from the Latin word masculus. So Latin was spoken in the Roman Empire. We're talking basically the 600 years before Christ, the 600 years after Christ. Latin is spoken, and it was used during that time. It wasn't until the probably 10th, 12th, 14th century English that it really came to mean what we know it to mean today, which is essentially the qualities and characteristics traditionally attributed to men. So when we're talking about masculinity, we are talking about qualities that we traditionally associate with men. So kind of using that as kind of our basis. The word wasn't used a ton, and some of this is hard to track because the rise of TV and the internet kind of like distorts things. But really, it was as far as we go back, we've got records back to the 1800s. It was kind of used relatively nominally. At least it was the same amount year in and year out with a little more here, a little less there. And then starting in the 50s and 60s, that's when we see a spike.
Okay.
Now, what's going on in the 50s and 60s?
Spike in the use of the word, eh?
We got feminism
Yep.
that is coming on the scene. We've got a rejection wholesale of traditional sexual and moral values with the Cultural Revolution of the 60s and 70s. And, I think we've mentioned it previously, but you've got a lot of, single motherhood that comes into play. You got the war on drugs, all of this. And now there's this conversation around masculinity and what that means of or pertaining to male. So, there are words out there in the culture as well when we talk about this topic of toxic and traditional. So these are words that kind of get thrown around. So I'm gonna help us define some of this a little bit. But first of all, let's talk about masculinity. Okay. So in general, there are certain qualities that are associated with masculinity, and these are some of them. I'll just kind of go through these quickly. Strength, courage, independence, resilience, assertiveness, leadership, emotional restraint, competitiveness, rationality, and protectiveness.
Okay.
So those are words that, kind of across cultures are used to, not all cultures, but generally speaking, that define men. So I wanted to kind of start with these, and then we can dovetail into maybe with the nuances. Where does it become toxic? And where even does it become traditional that we may have a problem with? And I'll be interested to see. Again, for those who just joined the Patros Podcast, we really like to have, if we can, several generations represented. And so from young to old, I think it is going to be interesting to see, well, you know what, I don't really see that as being toxic, or you guys might, younger.
That's what it means to be a man.
Younger crowd might be like, "Yo, I'm so sensitive, and that's okay." Like,
why'd you say "yo"? Like,
I don't know. Like, I don't know why I looked at you either.
Yeah, but. For real. He literally went like, "Yo," and then he got a Latin accent out of nowhere. Bro, what?
That was just like a Freudian slip.
Bro, he acting toxic and traditional out here.
I'm gonna skip the first one because I'm gonna make an argument about that one later. But I'm gonna go to the second one. Courage. Courage. Being brave, facing challenges, and taking risks are qualities traditionally linked to masculinity. Are you guys, courage, is that a toxic or a non-toxic trait?
Who's going first?
You're speaking.
Let's do an order. All right, fine. I don't think it's toxic, but I think that a lot of people might assume that a man is being toxic when he's courageous, because they might put some assumptions on his intent. Like, oh, you think that I need you. Like, I don't need your savior mindset. I don't need, you know what I'm saying? And that's why, like, a lot of guys struggle with, should I step up in this situation or let them handle it themselves, Because a lot of people have started attributing, like, courageousness to, you think I'm weak.
Wow. That's crazy.
But I don't think it's not. I like it. Be courageous if you're male or female.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
so
what I
you
was
don't.
gonna say
So
too.
you guys don't. So you're saying that's not a male trait.
I think men should be courageous because that's just what it is. But
are men more courageous?
I don't think that it is just a male trait. No.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking? Is that the question?
I mean, no.
I thought
I think I
we're
would
just
agree
asking
with
if it's
that.
toxic.
that was just a follow
Oh,
up.
facts.
I think it's a trait for anybody, right? Like
Yeah.
men and women. I think that's a trait that should be put forward in general. Do I think that men tend to exhibit courage more regularly? Yes. And I think that's something my wife and I talk about a lot. Like, part of my role is to give my strength to her, right? Like, she's looking for that. She's looking for me to be courageous, and even in the simple little things, right? Like, we got chickens, right? And Allan, you and I have talked about this. Like, chickens die, right? My wife, whenever we have a dead chicken, does she take care of it or does she call me? She calls me, I got to come take care of it, right? Because
It's not that she couldn't take care of it. She had
right,
to.
but she don't want to, right? Because she's looking at me, she's like, hey, this is a
It's
male
a
thing.
convenient
Like,
time
you
to not
do
be
this.
courageous.
Right. But in general, like, I think that's part of our role as men is to be courageous and step in the gap for our women.
Yes.
Right? That's what we're called to do.
Do y'all want to hear more of that conversation? Well, you can by joining us for exclusive member-only content by becoming Patros subscribers. Just click the link in our description or join us at our website.
When y'all become subscribers, like, you're telling us that you enjoy this content, and so every dollar that you give is helping us to produce more of it.
So thank you again for joining us as we together embrace healthy masculinity.